Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, landmark decisions that will shape history. The Knesset calls for Israeli sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. And French President Macron says France will recognize Palestine as a state. Plus, is there really a food shortage in Gaza? Chuck Holton reports from the Kerem Shalom crossing. And desperation among Israeli Druze in the face of the massacre of their relatives in Syria. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. It was a week of momentous decisions, all affecting the future of the region. Israel's parliament moved to advance sovereignty over Judea and Samaria in a symbolic vote that could reshape the Middle East. French President Macron says France will recognize Palestine as a state, and the U.S. is cutting short Gaza ceasefire talks and bringing its negotiating team home from Doha. Meanwhile, humanitarian aid piles up on Gaza's doorstep. Chuck Holton has the latest on these items and more.
In a move that could have major implications for the future of the region, Israel's parliament Wednesday passed a symbolic resolution calling for the full application of sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. While the vote has no immediate legal effect, it signals growing momentum within the ruling coalition to formalize control over the biblical heartland.
The Knesset approved a historic declaration to apply full Israeli sovereignty over our homeland, Judea and Samaria.
More than 700,000 Jewish Israelis now live in those areas, while nearly 3 million Palestinians remain under Israeli military law. The motion follows last year's resolution opposing a Palestinian state and could mark a turning point in Israeli policy. While eyes remain on Judea and Samaria, Gaza continues to dominate international headlines. Israeli officials say they're doing everything possible to get aid to civilians, but accuse Hamas of blocking deliveries and the United Nations of refusing to cooperate.
Let me start with the facts and not the fiction. In Gaza today, there is no famine caused by Israel. There is, however, a man-made shortage engineered by Hamas. Now, too often, the full story is not being told. This suffering exists because Hamas has created it.
He noted aid is delivered through two channels: the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has delivered tens of millions of meals to civilians, and UN-coordinated shipments of raw materials delivered to Gaza bakeries and communal kitchens. President Isaac Herzog visited Gaza Wednesday to inspect military progress and the humanitarian situation.
We are acting here according to international law, providing humanitarian aid according to international law, and those trying to sabotage the humanitarian efforts are Hamas and its people who are spinning this to prevent our forces from dismantling infrastructures that could harm us and our citizens.
Despite over 950 aid trucks cleared and ready for distribution inside Gaza, the United Nations continues to refuse to work with the IDF. Israeli officials say the UN is more invested in bashing Israel than feeding hungry Gazans. Meanwhile, the IDF has concluded an internal investigation into last week's strike on Gaza's only Catholic church. They say the building was hit by a misfired artillery shell caused by a technical malfunction, not a targeted attack. But that hasn't stopped recent accusations that Israel is persecuting Christians.
There is no crisis. Where there is a crisis is that the pro-Hamas movement are trying to engineer a crisis. This is purely an engineered crisis. We take our relationship with the Christian community extremely seriously. Israel is the only country where the number of Christians are increasing. It's the only country in hundreds of miles in any direction where Christians are free to practice their faith freely without restrictions.
Outside Gaza, regional tensions remain high. An Iranian Navy helicopter confronted the USS Fitzgerald after it neared Iranian waters in the Gulf of Oman. The aircraft reportedly issued a warning before the destroyer threatened to shoot it down, the first confrontation since the 12-day war ended mid-June. The United States is cutting short Gaza ceasefire talks and bringing its negotiating team home from Qatar after what it calls a disappointing response from Hamas.
While the mediators have made a great effort, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. It is a shame that Hamas has acted in this selfish way.
That announcement came just hours after French President Emmanuel Macron said France will recognize Palestine as a state. Israel slammed the move, calling it dangerous and diplomatically irresponsible. At the same time, Israeli officials are reacting strongly to what they're calling a blatant act of anti-Semitism in Spain, after more than 50 French Jewish teens were removed from a flight in Valencia after allegedly singing in Hebrew. And to push back against growing international criticism over humanitarian conditions in Gaza, Israel's military gave journalists a tour of the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, where officials showed aid totaling a week's worth of food for everyone in Gaza, all awaiting distribution by the UN.
The state of Israel doesn't limit the trucks of aid coming to Gaza Strip. The main issue or the main problem is the collection and distributing issue.
The colonel said Hamas is using hunger as a weapon in the court of public opinion, intentionally starving its people.
They sending people to interfere, and they are doing that in order to build a picture of a crisis, of a chaos, of a problem in the humanitarian aid. That's false. 4,500 trucks in the last 2 months entered Gaza Strip and distributed to the people.
We're looking at literally millions of meals that are sitting out here in this parking lot just inside the border fence of Gaza that could be feeding the people inside Gaza, but the United Nations doesn't want to distribute it because that would mean having to work together with the IDF to get the job done. And it makes you wonder if that means the United Nations would rather bash Israel than feed the hungry. From Jerusalem, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
The world watched in horror over the last 10 days as Syrian Druze communities were massacred. In an effort to quench the carnage, Israel launched airstrikes on military targets in Syria. We asked Israelis what they thought about Israel helping the Druze.
Do you think Israel should be helping the Druze community now?
Of course, the Druze have proved themselves that they are a people that help us, that they are faithful to us, and that they protect us, and we need to protect them in return, of course.
For sure, because the Druze have been like our brothers all the time. If you check this last war, there is a lot of Druze who died, who fell on the fighting to protect Israel.
The Druze, of course, they're our brothers. They have cast their lot with the people of Israel, and we need to help them in every way possible. I'm not saying that Israel needs to enter with tanks to Syria, no, but to help them in other ways, it's possible to help them.
They serve in the IDF, and they also help us explaining to the world what is the truth, what is truly happening here, because of their loyalty to Israel and because this is what is morally right to do. Because what they have experienced there, it's like their October 7th.
Because they're our citizens. We protect whoever is here, like the hostages, like the soldiers. For this, we're here.
If you want to live with us peacefully, obviously it's possible. And the proof is our relationship with the Druze. But apparently the Arabs, they choosing a wrong way. And they should learn from the Druze to be friends of us and not be against us.
Israel delivered humanitarian aid to Syria's Druze community after more than 1,000 were killed in sectarian violence. But many Druze Israelis said it wasn't enough, so they crossed the border to defend their relatives. Chuck Holton reports from Majd al-Shams.
In As-Sweida, Syria, Islamist militias stormed Druze neighborhoods, backed by regime forces, killing more than 2,000 people. They butchered entire families and raided hospitals. Survivors say the carnage rivals October 7th. And it's not only the Druze. One of the most horrific reports, Pastor Khaled Mezer of the Good Shepherd Evangelical Church in Sweida was murdered along with 19 family members. Their last photo was taken just days before the massacre.
They killed a 3-month-old baby in cold blood. They killed about 100 doctors, nurses, patients, just slaughtered them in the hospital. That's the government who did that.
Israel responded, striking regime forces, then quietly coordinated a medical aid mission to Sweida, airlifting equipment and supplies to a devastated hospital. For Druze Israelis watching from across the Golan Heights, however, it wasn't enough. So this is Majd al-Shams, which is an Israeli Druze village that's right on the Syrian border. This is the border fence right here, and Syria is just the other side over there. You can see that there is a heavy presence of IDF here now, and that's because the Druze people, more than 1,000 of them, crossed through that fence the other day and went into Syria to help their brethren who are being killed on the other side. Hundreds illegally crossed through the border fence, on foot, others in cars. Many hoped to fight. Most were simply desperate to help.
When I saw the videos about the killing of my community, I felt so angry as all of the Druze of Israel. We wanted to do something. We saw the gates are opened, and we didn't ask. We want to join the fighting. If the fight wants to stop, we will join. We'll do what we can do. We can't stay silent.
It was just about a year ago right here on this soccer field. And it was a night very much like this one. A lot of young kids out here playing when a Hezbollah rocket came in and landed on this field and killed 12 young people. The city of Majd al-Shams, only 12,000 people. Everyone knew one of those kids, and it is still reeling to this day. And across the fence, more Druze children are dying. While the IDF has resecured the border and brought many of the Druze back, pressure is mounting. Residents say if Israel doesn't intervene, they will. With family on the other side, the pain is personal.
If the Druze in As-Sweida, the man would have fallen, we would have witnessed an October 7 epic scale, apocalyptic scale. And the IDF, again, stopped it. So if you think about it, the only one who actually stopped the genocide already twice in 2 years are the Israelis.
The UN, though, is blasting Israel for getting involved to save the Druze.
The Secretary General is also concerned by Israel's airstrikes on Syrian territory and calls on Israel to refrain from violations of Syria's independence, its sovereignty, and its territorial integrity.
Last week, Israeli jets struck targets near Damascus and As-Sweida, including what appeared to be Syrian military headquarters. Analysts say the message is clear. Israel is drawing a red line.
We're not doing a favor here to the Druze. Yes, we have a blood covenant with them, and we're doing the right thing, the Jewish thing. We're doing the humane thing of protecting our allies and innocent people. But the people who came to slaughter the Druze will tomorrow come to slaughter the Jews and the Christians and the Americans, the Europeans, and anyone. They're the enemy of the West.
Inside As-Sweida, an uneasy ceasefire has taken hold. But jihadis have not forgotten the recent fighting, and fighters are already returning. Residents say they're determined to finish what they started.
I can't stay still watching my relatives, my people being slaughtered without doing anything. I know I don't have military experience, but at least I would do the minimum I can do to help my people. I can't see them dying and not doing anything.
From Majd al-Shams, I'm Chuck Holt for CBN News.
Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs recently published a report about CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Diaspora Affairs Minister Amichai Chikli came to our studio and explained how CAIR is linked to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and why their agenda needs to be understood. Here's an excerpt from our conversation. Probably most people don't even know about CAIR or whatever. What should Americans be thinking about this?
I think it's very important for Americans to understand that there is a plan of the Muslim Brotherhood, they have a vision in 100 years to make America a Muslim state. If you want to see where it's also already successful, take a look at what's happening in Belgium. Take a look at what happens in Britain.
Right.
The situation in Britain is a disaster. They're already in control of London with the mayor who is an Islamist. They're in control in many cities all across the UK. And you can see now with the legislation of lowering the vote age to 16, an initiative coming from Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, they are so dependent on the Muslim votes. They lower the age because that they have many children, and in terms of the demographic mechanism, this is a very wise decision for the left in Britain. So you have an alliance between the left and the Muslims. We call it the Red and Green Alliance. Left and Muslim.
Wow.
And you can see the same pattern in the Democratic Party in the US, which is already connected heavily to CAIR. By the way, CAIR is registered under the 501c3, meaning that they are not allowed to do lobbying and political activity, but they are pushing forward candidates of the Democratic Party who supports their cause. So they have the vision, 100-year Muslim America. There are other organizations. You have the student organization, AMP. You have a political organization operating from Michigan called Engage. You have the activity in the mosques. And there's, I think, an important attempt of Senator Ted Cruz to ban the activity of the Muslim Brotherhood. And that can also be very impactful, not just for the US, but also for the branches of the Muslim Brotherhood in Israel. We have here also a powerful Muslim Brotherhood, and because of, let's say, the stronghold of the left in the Supreme Court, it's very hard to ban the activity of the Muslim Brotherhood in Israel. By the way, the UAE designated CAIR as a terror organization in 2014. So just to let you know.
So what can they do in the United States? How can they stop this goal of CAIR and the Muslim Brotherhood?
First is to tear up the mask from their faces and calling CAIR what it is. Hamas propaganda Islamist organization. Nothing to do with human rights, nothing nice or soft about it. The awareness. People need to be aware of the danger that is coming, not from Muslims, but from Islamists and political Islam. These are two separate things. Not all Muslims are necessarily related to political Islam. CAIR is heavily related to political Islam, to Hamas, to the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is very, very important to bear in mind the difference between the two, and to be not just aware, but also to act like what Senator Cruz is doing. I think that's a very important legislation that can also have a very positive impact on the local branches here, because they are using the same mechanism of visas, etc.
The stress of constant war has taken its toll on every Israeli. Now a new resilience center is providing a lifeline to the weary. This sanctuary is offering a place of hope and healing. Roberto Torres-Cedillo takes us to its grand opening.
Out of the ashes of the Holocaust and 2,000 years of exile, against all odds, the Jewish people, driven by hope and a desire to live, founded the modern state of Israel in a single day. Persecution, trauma, and tragedy have afflicted the Jewish people for generations. Today, 1 in 3 Israelis live with some type of anxiety or trauma-related distress. After the horrific attacks perpetrated by the terrorist group Hamas on October 7th, Israelis have been at war for their survival like never before since the rebirth of their nation. I recently experienced this reality firsthand as my family and I moved to Israel and watched the Islamist regime of Iran send ballistic missiles to Israel with one sole purpose in mind: to annihilate the Jewish people. If we felt the anxiety and stress of 12 days of war, imagine what Israelis have felt on a daily basis for almost 2 years. CBN Israel understood the critical and growing need on the ground and developed an innovative strategy to address mental health in Israeli society. I am at the launch of CBN Israel's Community Support and Resilience Center. This event marks a milestone in CBN Israel's relief work in the Holy Land. The center will serve as a network for service professionals and people seeking help. Through workshops, seminars, and events open to the public, the center will facilitate training on self-care strategies, stress reduction, coping skills, and processing traumatic events. The goal is not only to build personal resilience, but to provide assistance at the community level and offer support where government and healthcare programs are unable to keep up with the increasing demand.
From like an emotional standpoint, I think just taking the first step, it doesn't mean you have to share everything you've been through. It doesn't mean you have to expose the deepest parts of yourself. You know, even just taking that one step makes a huge difference, and knowing that there's somewhere you can turn.
Here in Israel, difficulties continue and evolve, and we have to learn to strengthen both the psychology that already exists and also to build new resilience. My goal is to do it on several levels. First of all, with the people we're treating, because sometimes we don't give the patients enough tools, and it's very difficult for them to deal with all the problems, with all the pressure and the sadness. There is a lot of pain in the nation, so people need to be strong in order to process it, but also to help others. So that's one layer. Then there is the layer of caregivers, and that includes also faith leaders and pastors. These are people who have a lot to give to build resilience, whether it's prayer or Bible study or counseling. There's support that we can receive and distribute to those who are in great need. And that layer is very important to work on so that they understand that they are a part of building resilience in our nation.
The people of Israel are no strangers to adversity, and they have experienced firsthand that suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. This is why CBN Israel's Community Support and Resilience Center exists, to provide tangible help and hope. This hope echoes the promise spoken by the prophet long ago. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope.
What an amazing center made possible by CBN partners. That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blasts so you can continue to receive our CBN content. And please, keep praying for this tumultuous part of the world, for the peace of Jerusalem, that God would thwart the plans of evil men, and that his justice would prevail. And as always, that all the hostages would come home safely and soon. Remember, the God who watches over Israel, and you and me, neither slumbers nor sleeps. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.